So for those of you who may not know me, my name is Kim Keene. I am the Director of Marketing and Business Strategy for Orbis. And I have been organizing these sessions for about 5 years now. And I'll tell you, the last one that we did last year around AI was by far the most popular session that we've done. We got a ton of interest around it. We got I guess, a lot of interest to follow up on it, which is why we're kind of extending the topic and the conversation today and diving even deeper into it and with new panelists and speakers on the topic and kind of approaching it from a different angle. So you might be asking, why is Orbis talking about AI? And for some of you, you might be asking, like, who is Orbis anyway? So for those of you who may not know Orbis, we're a geospatial company. We work with a lot of folks here in this room. We work predominantly in land asset management and with the Timberland investment community. Everything we do is kind of centered around technology and innovation, with a diverse mix of kind of services and products like rec lease management, geospatial services, data modeling, property tax management, and a little bit of everything. So with all that said, staying on top of AI trends or just trying to be aware of what's going on, certainly, and the changes with technology, something that's like really important to us, which is why we're sitting here today. So I hope that helps some of you understand or get a better understanding of Orbis if you didn't already have that. All right, so some quick housekeeping before we get started. I know that we're going to be doing questions with the audience or taking questions at the end. I believe you guys or have the Slido app, or they're using that you can submit questions through. We're also going to have folks go around with microphones toward the end also, so you can ask those that way. And do make sure you stick around to the end, because if you're not familiar with Orbis, we love doing giveaways, and so we've got some fun stuff for you at the end. All right, so you guys ready to get the fire started? Awesome. Okay. So as I previously mentioned, our last topic was a hot one around AI. And one of the key takeaways from that, or the key themes, was data, or lack thereof, as it relates to the Timberland investment industry. So a lot of questions were asked as far as like what data exists or doesn't exist, and then from what's there, data quality, how good is it or reliable is it? And I think as artificial intelligence becomes more synonymous with our day-to-day lives and activities, it also has to start being considered more in our business strategies, right? And as our industry starts giving more consideration to integrating it into our strategies, how do we measure the integrity of that data, or can we even measure it, right? And on top of that, how do we balance it with other important factors like ethical considerations, business objectives that lead to favorable returns, and vision planning for long-term growth in your organizations. So we're really fortunate today to have these panelists with us to help us try to navigate some of these questions and these AI waters. They all have experience outside of our timberland and forestry community, so I think some of their insights and perspectives will be really interesting and helpful to the conversation. So let me get to introducing them. First up, Dr. Carl Henson. Carl, I believe in your email signature you have the AI doctor. Is that right?
I do.
Yeah, awesome. So Carl is the founder and CEO of Marzeka Consulting, where he specializes in helping organizations integrate artificial intelligence with traditional business practices. And I know this is a UGA conference, a lot of bulldogs out here. Y'all go easy on Carl. He did get his doctorate from the University of Florida, so take it easy on him there. But Carl, welcome to Campfire Sessions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Welcome him. Thank you. Okay. So next up, Danon Margeson. He is the founder and CEO of Arden AI. It's a new venture focused on maximizing land value via energy and carbon credit opportunities. Danon honed his AI skills at Harvard, which then led to a multidisciplinary background that includes tech, law, operations, and product strategy. And the common thread through all of his career was kind of that drive to leverage data insights into sustainable solutions for climate and land stewardship. So Danon, welcome to the panel. Thank you. Okay. And our next panelist spent his early career building perception AI for Ford Motor Company, and then went on to build the foundational perception AI technology at 2 autonomous vehicle companies. And those 2 companies would grow eventually to be worth over $1 billion. Not Elon's company, right? Yeah. So Peter will tell us about those later on. But Peter McHale is the CEO and co-founder of Gaia AI, where he applies modern data with AI technology for the timber and logging industries now. So some of you out there may work with Peter or be working with him soon. Peter has a couple master's degrees under his belt: computer engineering, robotics, AI. So thank you for being here, Peter.
Thank you.
Awesome. So as you can see, we've got a bunch of smart cookies sitting up here. So I hope you find this discussion interesting and also informative. And let's have a good time, guys. You ready to jump into it? Cool. All right, Danon, you're up first in the hot seat. Okay, as I previously mentioned, you have a diverse career working across a variety of sectors, with technology kind of being, like at the center of all of that. And before we dive into AI, I really want you to touch on data a little bit. What are the trends that you see happening right now, and how organizations overall have been leveraging data? And then also, where do you think organizations have been falling behind?
So first, thanks, Kim and the Orbis team, for having us, and thank you, Aaron, for organizing this awesome conference. I'm new to the space, and just so many wonderful people here, so happy to be here. A couple different ways to think about data and AI. One is sort of how organizations are utilizing it for their operations, their strategy, how it'll impact the day-to-day workflows. The other is sort of this macro topic of the growth of AI, which really equates in many ways to the growth of energy needs and how that'll impact land use and other parts of our businesses. So on the first point, I think all of you, I hope, have used AI tools by this point. I hope you're all leaning in. I'm generally a technology skeptic because I've been through many mega trends that end up happening slower than expected. This is not that. This is happening. It's happening now. And if you're not already fully leaned in, I would say you're probably behind. This is going to transform all of our work, undoubtedly. So it is sort of a moment and a sea change that we all should be paying attention to and learning about. Specifically with data, you start with these foundational models that you're all aware of: the Anthropics, the OpenAIs, Meta, and you can name 5 others. And they're building these really robust data mining engines that are also starting to intuit and derive insights from data. So that's pretty cool. It only really becomes useful in specific business cases when you apply your own data and rules and logic to those sort of foundational models. So Peter will talk about this. I'm sure they're doing it at Gaia. That's what we're doing at Arden. It's sort of applying specific use cases for landowners, asset managers, to look at how land stewardship may change with different types of data, geospatial, all these other kinds of things. The macro trends, I think, are even more interesting in many ways. The energy needs are absolutely crazy. So the most conservative estimates are going to say data centers right now are about 2% of global electricity. Within 5 years, it'll be about 4%, so doubling in 5 years. That's a conservative estimate. Some people think that to stay competitive with China within the next 25 years, we're going to have to double U.S. electricity, I should say. And if you think about doubling electricity, it would be the largest infrastructure project in U.S. history, and it would require a lot of land. And a lot of that energy is going to come from solar and wind, mostly because they're the cheapest and they take land. You also have transmission, you have data center siting, obviously natural gas will play a role in that. And as much as we think solar might be ugly and it does take up a lot of land, it is the cheapest and fastest to deploy, and it is going to be a huge component of that energy mix. So that's something that we have to be thinking about with this macro trend, is how will our land use shift as these data demands grow. So.
Interesting. Thank you. Yeah, it's good to know. In talking about, how quickly things are shifting, obviously, again, AI is advancing so rapidly. You're currently working in carbon management and land use practices. What are some of those biggest changes? You mentioned energy, and consumption. What are some of that are specifically affecting land management and investing?
Yeah, so the last 10 years, 20 years in particular, have dramatically changed the opportunities for land. So energy is a big one, and again, transmission, data center, siting, and then obviously energy siting, so solar, wind have been huge. But you also have all these other markets that are growing. So the company that I built before starting Arden was in the carbon credit space, and there's sort of two carbon markets, so this is actually an important point to call out. There's this legacy carbon market that was largely around avoiding emissions, and there's a lot of fraud in that market, and that market is overall shrinking, and it'll eventually disappear. There's another market, a newer market, around quality carbon credits, and sometimes you hear the term carbon removal. That market is growing quite rapidly, and that's where we were focused on at Carbon Direct before this. And there is a lot of opportunity for landholders to make money selling carbon credits, especially improving forest management practices, conservation, other things. But there's other credit types too. So I mentioned conservation, not a credit type, but that's a way to monetize land. You have biodiversity. You have something called insetting on agricultural land, where you're starting to change your do regenerative ag practices, and an organization will pay you to make that change. There's a million of these things. So it's important, I think, for everybody to start to look at our whole portfolio of assets. Where could things have shifted? And if that analysis hasn't been done, how can we start to do that soon? Because the opportunity landscape is also shifting quite quickly.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it's a lot to think about. Carl, I want to jump over to you real quick. And, as I mentioned, your doctorate research focused on AI's potential in business strategy. Can you sum up some of those findings for us? Just kind of like break that down for us, and then how you're applying that or using that in your services now?
Yeah, and I'll start out by really kind of what was the motivation. So, as a business executive, this was actually even before ChatGPT. I was using a lot of different AI tools and predictive analytics, and I had just purchased a very pricey AI tool for my company, and it was great. It was going out, it was identifying or taking my ideal customer profile and going and getting buyer intent and feeding my marketing and sales funnel and giving my salespeople these incredible leads. Well, found out that my salespeople weren't using those leads. These are free leads. Why aren't they using them? And so that actually became the motivation of my research. I wanted to learn more of the barriers to AI adoption. And I looked at a lot of different variables, and they ended up that there were 4 driving factors for AI adoption. The first, and all of this is, really think about it, it's common sense, but it's good to hear it again. The first and most important is education and training. It's important that you are introducing AI to your company, to your employees, and make sure that training is staying up to date. It's moving fast. And if you're not able to have a training program in-house that stays up to date with all the changes, then you need to bring somebody from the outside to do that. The second driving factor was showing usefulness. So what that means is that you need to make sure that you are teaching your employees what's the benefits of them using that tool. How are they going to increase productivity? How are they going to eliminate waste, or even, if they're in sales, how can they earn more commissions? But show them how it's useful. The third is ease of use. You don't want, I mean, with any type of technology, if you have a difficult interface and it's hard to use, they're not going to use it. So that's important. And then the last driving factor is personal innovativeness. So looked at on two different parts. One on the individual side, for everybody, it's important. Y'all, we need to be trying new technologies. You got to be willing to try new technologies and demo them. For organizations, you need to start looking, when you hire, look for people that have that personal innovativeness, that are willing to try new technologies and bring it in. Following those factors, then it'll help you increase adoption. And one of the things we were talking about earlier is, and I know Dana mentioned it as well, that hopefully you guys are already using it. If you're not bringing AI into your organization, you have a year, basically. If you don't have it within your organization in a year, you're going to be left behind. And we don't want that for anybody. And in fact, there's an opportunity to really disrupt if you're able to come in and bring AI in now. Then you could be a part of the changing landscape.
Yeah, and we'll have these guys talk in a little bit about some of their recommendations for how exactly to, get started and answer some of those questions. So thank you for that. Carl, I do want you to touch on responsible AI a little bit. At the start of the AI revolution, I think the concept was predominantly thought to be applicable for just like the development side or developers. But I think it's clear now that, across the board, responsible AI is important for everybody and certainly for business leaders and decision makers to consider. So is this topic coming up with your clients? Is it a point of contention? Where does it fall on the scale of concern?
Yeah, it's extremely important. Responsible AI should become part of your overall strategy. AI could do amazing things, and I'm sure y'all have heard, and we'll talk about some of the cool things that AI will do. But on the other side, it could do some really bad things as well. Things like data privacy, biases, ethical decision making. So there are things that you got to make sure that you're thinking about when you're building these models. And that, like to your point, is not just developers; it's all of us, because as you become more ingrained in AI, you're going to learn that you're going to start creating your own AI tools. I'm not an IT guy at all. I'm a sales and marketing guy. I'm a business guy. But I'm developing my own AI tools now, and y'all will as well, because it's really easy to do. My clients, just some examples of how that comes into play. One for biases and fairness. There are companies that use AI in their hiring practices and even credit scoring. And so that's great that it helps you in that process. But what if there's biases in those decision making? So whether it's hiring or credit scoring, and that as the machine learning, as the AI tool becomes smarter and learning, then it's going to unfortunately start creating their own biases and stereotyping, and that could become a problem for companies, and they could get sued. Privacy is another one. I got a few clients in the medical space, and anytime you're using an AI tool like, say, ChatGPT, whatever you put in there, it's learning. So a medical company in medical, or even anybody using a tool like that, and they put numbers or financials in it, that ChatGPT is learning what you put in there, and it could be out. It could be out there. So privacy is very important, and with medical, I got to make sure that the HIPAA compliance and everything that we're doing, that data privacy is strong. So it could, if you don't have responsible AI in your overall strategy, it could destroy your brand. It could destroy your revenue. I mean, imagine if you were known as a company that were doing some of those or using AI and it was causing some of those problems, it could really hurt you.
PR nightmare.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that. All right, Peter, your background again, we talked about the work with AI and autonomous vehicles, which sounds so fun. Can you give us a brief summary of your time there and kind of what you worked on? And also want you to talk about some of the specific challenges in data that you faced then and how you navigated that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really like to think of myself as a very geeky guy with an MBA. And a lot of where that comes from is my past life working at Ford and Argo AI, Main Mobility, was largely working on this specific kind of AI around working with raw sensor data, which almost looks like a bunch of zeros and ones in its most raw form, and going from that to useful information, right? So I love to joke that, basically what I built for at these companies, or was a big part of helping build, was basically telling the rest of the car, the rest of the AI, basically, hey, that's a car, it's a pedestrian. Basically, please don't hit that, please don't hit that, please don't hit that. Now at Gaia, we build a very similar kind of technology, but for forestry, but that's kind of the underlying AI. A lot of it is called SLAM, simultaneous localization and mapping. So that's kind of some of the context in the background. Really, some of the data challenges that I've experienced from that industry that really very much so translate into timber, into forestry, is there's often a very big chicken and egg problem. It's like a cold start engine, right? Where there's a cliche expression in AI that data is food for AI, right? So when you exist in an industry where a lot of our data is hugging trees with tape measures, right? And very fragmented and very sparse. And so how do you start to find valuable insights from that sparsity? And so one of the tricks that I learned from autonomous vehicles that has been really powerful is how to navigate that chicken and egg, right? In autonomous vehicles, what we often did is we trained very, very rigorously safety drivers, right? And these safety drivers would be very in tune with the AI. I swear to God, they often would know it better than I did, right? After writing parts of it, because they see it, they stare at it every day. And so they would engage with it, and they would manage it, right? And so they'd be very cautious and careful on the road. So it was almost like a very hybrid approach, right? You didn't just throw autonomous vehicles on the road on day 0 and say, oh God, I hope it doesn't hit anything. You have someone managing that kind of deployment. And so that is a very effective strategy for going out and starting to create value, starting to deploy systems, but also collaborating and being a bit hybrid with AI human workflows to start to also aggregate the kind of data that you need to defeat that cold start. The other thing I've really learned is, and this is kind of me saying this from the geek in me, right? Is not everything needs to be machine learning, and not every kind of AI is machine learning. Machine learning is a statistical mapping of inputs to outputs, right? That's really a pretty solid understanding of it. It's a regression model in different flavors. And so when it comes to SLAM, geeks have a tendency that we want to build the coolest thing. Doesn't always necessarily translate to the most practical or the most ROI or the most deployable. And so there's specific ways to build technologies where you can overcome those problems in specific ways, such as using heuristics, et cetera. And so we take heavy advantage of that as well at Gaia.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, and I think you're in this neat position, again, because of your former background, but now, working very deeply within the forestry industry. And I know, Dana, you spoke specifically about trends in data as a whole in AI. Peter, can you talk about trends specific to our industry and what you see happening or what's going on?
Yeah,
Where are we at?
Absolutely. I mean, we're in a very different place, being very frank, right? Like than where a lot of other industries are at right now. I have close friends who are deploying this technology in mining, in construction, even in broader agricultural applications. And what you see is often industries that can sometimes be slow to change. The change comes very quickly. And what we've seen is that often the early adopters, they're participating in when it becomes alpha, right? And that means something very specific. It creates a positive feedback loop. All of a sudden, they're the hot investment, right? And all of a sudden, they get more money and they deepen that advantage. And so I've kind of seen that happening in other industries, and I'm excited for the partnerships that we have here to help it start to happen and start to transform this industry, because we need it. But towards that end, right, like really what I see happening here is in order to do this in timber, we first need to start at the core, right? I joke all the time, like, you know, I'm tired of hearing the words AI and models way more than I ever hear the word data. And frankly, data is just not sexy, right? It's AI is, right? It's exciting. But you need to start with the food, right? You need to start with the thing that all these models rely on. That common expression, crap in, crap out, excuse my French, sorry, Kim, it really applies here, right? And so how the heck do we do that in timber? And so in timber, one man's worldview, right? So much of what we value, no matter what you're talking about, timber, carbon, biodiversity, wildfire risk, right? All these kinds of dimensions, the real core measurement is underneath that canopy. Almost no one cares about the canopy in and of itself, right? It's the stuff that's below it. And so we need to start there, right? We need to start with what is the data and getting a rich measurement on it that's not, you know, tallied DBHs, et cetera, to then start to participate and explore together in collaboration, technologists and the industry, about how to tap into a much richer data to start to train these models and realize that ROI, realize that alpha, and then start to use that to train broader models. So it's a very literally bottoms-up approach, right? And I think that's how we need to kind of bring it into timber is start getting the right data that we need.
I like that. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Dana, I want to come back to you really quick, and you and I have talked about before, like the advantages and disadvantages in leaning in with what it's called legacy partners or legacy players versus AI first companies. Can you give us, explain that concept for everybody and kind of give us an example of what you mean by that?
Yeah, I can, and I also just want to reemphasize one of Peter's points of industries that are moving slowly, the change will happen seemingly very, very quickly. And you know, the reason I'm here, I live 5 minutes from the Microsoft campus. We'll talk about Microsoft and legacy players, but I'm here because this industry excites me because it is one of the slower to adopt technology, but it's one of the most important for the future of the United States and for energy and security, and the fact that Silicon Valley is not paying attention to this industry to me is almost criminal, and so I'm excited to be here, and I think you'll see a lot of other folks come to that realization soon. On legacy players versus sort of AI first companies, so there's this bifurcation happening. You have these heavily funded, some are startups, some are big companies, but the ones I mentioned earlier, OpenAI, Anthropic, you've got Llama, which is an incredible model. You have Grok that's just come out. And these are, you know, tens of billions, 100 billion plus data mining, inference companies, and you've all used them. There's also companies that are being built on top of those models. So maybe you've heard of Perplexity, for example. That's one that's well known. The fastest growing company in history potentially is called Cursor, which helps with coding. It went from 0 to $100 million with 17 people in like, I don't know, 4 months, 5 months, I think, I can't remember. But these are being built on top of what we're calling foundational models. And so the legacy software players are going to own the foundational models ultimately. It's just too capital intensive, and even after we get through all the data collection, because remember, AI can only work off the data that's available. It's going to mine every piece of data that's ever been created in human history, and it's probably relatively close to that already. Then it turns to inference, and inference is going to be also expensive, and that will just keep expanding over time, and they'll get smarter than us, and they'll get smarter, and they'll compete with each other. But large companies are going to do this capital-intensive work, and then you're going to need applications on top of that actually solve problems. So Peter's sick of not hearing the word data. I'm sick of not hearing the actual problems that we're trying to solve with AI. Everybody's like, I want to be an AI company. I'm hiring machine learning people. But very few are taking the time to think about where will this fundamentally change my business? What acute problems do I need to solve? And this is where these other companies, I think Gaia and Arden are trying to be these companies. We may or may not be successful, but Cursor has been successful. We're taking those models, building on top of them for specific use cases, specific organizations, specific industries, and really refining and homing in on that problem space. And I think as much as companies want to rely on the IBMs and the Microsofts, the reality is this space is moving way too fast, and you're going to need to take some risk with early stage startups, because every good AI company has been started in the last 18 months. And we're not going to have the same enterprise security. We're not going to have the same 600 company client list, but we're the ones doing the work that is actually going to solve your problem. So that's not a pitch for me. That's just the reality of the way this is evolving.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. So don't discount the new guys, is the takeaway.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you. Carl, real quick, again, we talked about, the need, like if you aren't incorporating or integrating it, now you're already behind. Can you give folks out there just some like a low-hanging fruit? Like, where do we start? What questions should we even be asking as organizational leaders or as businesses? What you got for them?
Yeah, so I find myself working with a lot of those companies that that are just they're like, all right, I know I got to get into this AI thing. I'm hearing about it, but I don't know where to start. I mean, is it really for me, or is it just for the big companies? And what I tell them is, first of all, it's coming and it's going to affect everybody. So, in fact, those small, mid-sized companies could probably benefit more even from the bigger companies, because AI, if you have the AI forward, basically, you say AI first, AI forward, AI native. Basically, you're thinking whatever you're doing, how can AI help you with that? So what I usually tell my clients is, and we go through an AI opportunity mapping process, but the lowest hanging fruit is to take your role. Think of all the tasks that you do, whether that's on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly, whatever, and write all those tasks down. Then you're going to go through, after you've listed those, then the questions you want to ask. First, what are the things that are repetitive? It's just you're doing over and over and over. Then, what are the things that are time consuming, taking a lot of your time? And then what are the things that are data driven? Ask those 3 questions on your long list, circle them if they hit that, and then, find the tool that's going to help you with that. Most of my clients, that's the simplest exercise that kind of starts the process to build your roadmap to AI, and it's amazing. Most of my clients, they're able to save 20% of their time immediately by just finding, and most of the tools are very accessible. They're not expensive. I mean, I'm a small consulting firm, and I can't afford all these big AI tools, but I pay for a lot of them, like Perplexity, I'm able to use for free. It's a great tool. They do have a paid version, but I don't need it for what I'm doing. So anyway, that's at least just a way to get started. And then, of course, once you get started, then it starts to snowball. You start seeing the real fruits of this, and you become a believer. You're like, oh my gosh, I could do this and this, and then it blows up, and you're becoming an AI forward company.
Gotcha. So the point is to just get started.
Get started. Start small.
Yeah.
And then iterate. Just take that first step. You gotta crawl, walk, run, right? So just start that crawling process.
Gotcha. Thank you, Carl. Peter, and lastly, I want to wrap up this portion of the session. I want to get your thoughts on risk. So again, implementing any new business strategy always comes with risks, especially technology, and especially when we talk about something like AI that's evolving so quickly. What are your thoughts on how folks can minimize risk as they go to adopt or integrate AI?
I'm way too excited for this question. And I'm excited for this because for a long time, this was what personally held us back,
Yeah.
right? And what I realized is, by and large, at some point you were kind of arguing, right? You're like, oh, just take the bet, like take the leap, accept the risk, and arguing doesn't get very far, right? And so I started to kind of, I feel like I mature a little bit on this front of, hey, this is my problem, I need to solve this. And really, there's two things that I've seen be really effective for us that I highly advocate for other technology companies in forestry. One of them is on technology, the technology end. Again, kind of this split brain for me between the geek and the MBA, right? So on the tech front, really the biggest thing is grow into existing workflows, right? It needs to be familiar, it needs to feel familiar, might upgrade the heck out of that workflow, right? But it needs to plug into it. And that's like one of the bigger drivers for technology to start to get adopted is when you're not asking your customer for forgiveness, right? That, hey, now it's going to be totally different from how you've been doing things and et cetera. That's exhausting, right? And so instead plug in and upgrade existing workflow. Then the other end on kind of the business side is on the front of directly addressing the risk itself, right? And huge component for adoption in and of itself, right? But you need to absorb that risk yourself as a technology company in whatever ways you are able to. You need to take that burden from the customer and own it yourself and just kind of accept that pill, swallow that pill as part of the cost of go-to-market, right? And so whatever you're able to do to reduce, when you say, oh, it's something new and what if it doesn't work, you need to figure out in whatever creative ways. Maybe you don't even need to figure it out yourself. Maybe you collaborate with your customers and your partners to figure that out. But you need to figure out a way that you are absorbing and either removing or at very least dramatically reducing that risk for people to try it out and start to adopt it. And then as soon as they're doing that, again, they get more comfortable, right? It's less foreign, it's less different. They get how to use it, they get the power, they get the value, and they start to see the future, right? They start to see what they can do in this market with that technology. And so those are the two main things, is grow the tech into existing workflows, and on the business side, really figure out business models where you yourself can start to own or absorb that risk instead of asking your customers to deal with it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay. I want to get to audience questions, so go ahead and start submitting those through Slido if you haven't already, or again, we're going to come around a bit with some microphones. But before we do that, I want to do a quick hot or not round with our panelists and put you all in the hot seat, so to speak. So you've got these fun signs here. The one side is showing the flame. I'm going to call out a list of phrases or words specific to what we're talking about here. If you think it's hot or relevant, you show that side. If you don't think it's anything we need to be concerned about or holds any weight, the other side is the extinguished flame, so you can show that, and we'll see if you guys are on the same page on some of these topics or if you've got something to say about it. Okay? Y'all ready?
Yes.
All righty. Okay. How about precision crop management? What are y'all thinking? Hot or not? Oh, everybody says hot. Okay, who wants to take it? That's Peter's like, yeah, that's my job. Okay, so it's hot.
I hope it's hot. We're figuring that out together, like as an industry.
Yeah.
Right. There's all sorts of low-hanging fruit or opportunities around management. I honestly do. I will argue. I think this one can be a big question mark about what level of precision is valuable in these decisions. But there is existing research that looks pretty promising.
Okay, you guys agree with that? You're good? All righty, cool. How about AI-enabled land-based carbon credit markets? I think I know what Dan's going to say. Okay, yeah, I'll say hot. All right, do you want to add to that?
I mean, I think, AI is going to help you identify opportunities, hotspots, areas to focus. Carbon credit development is often an on-ground exercise, so AI is not going to do it for you in the way that I think AI will do many of the things that everybody in this room does for their jobs for you. So I think carbon credits actually are somewhat insulated from AI, but yeah, in terms of identifying opportunities, upside, risk, it'll be good at that.
Okay.
It is good at that.
Predictive analytics for land use planning. Hot or not? Okay, all of this is hot. I like it. Okay, anybody want to comment or weigh in?
I think there's massive opportunity there. I think it's such green pasture. You know, even looking at like how we think about optimization on top of our underlying data, that's a space that's transformed in the last 3 years. You know, with AI, right, pulling it into it. But also it's just like, it's very much so a space where it's so much information. It's hard for us to navigate. I very much so believe in human AI hybrid kind of systems to help you navigate that complex space. And I think this is a very green pasture opportunity in timber specifically.
Cool. All right, I'm trying to think of one that somebody might say not hot to. Environmental monitoring. Still hot? Okay, all right, all right. AI for indigenous land rights recognition. Ooh.
Why do you need AI for that?
Oh, okay, let's hear it.
Well, I mean, this is a local issue predominantly, to have the relationships with the tribes. If we're trying to understand boundaries, the boundaries that we already know exist, they're mapped. I don't know that AI is going to be able to say, like, look at geospatial data and say, 2,000 years ago, this was used in a certain way, so it's likely tribal land.
Fair.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Okay. Peter seems to agree. Carl, thoughts?
It's not my area of specialty.
None of
I
us,
hear you.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Awesome. All right, let's move on to the audience questions and see if you guys got anything out there for our panel. I don't know if, Olivia, if we're doing Slido questions first or if we're doing microphone. Oh, here they go. Okay, somebody asked, how do you incorporate AI into a business strategy where data privacy is a key issue?
I'll go first on that because I used to be a privacy attorney, so this was my first career. Yeah, it's tricky, honestly. It's very tricky, especially when you look at the large foundational models. They're indiscriminately grabbing any piece of information they can. So if the data is not secure, it's probably made it into a foundational model at this point, and it may be extracted at some point later. So that's a real thing. As we build new stuff, though, there's certainly ways to architect the data so that it's insulated to your organization. And even, you know, maybe you've heard of a concept called RAGs, but retrieval augmented generation. You can take, you know, create a model on top of a model that only utilizes data on a local piece of hardware within your organization. That's going to be pretty secure unless you architect it in kind of a poor way. So there's opportunities there, but if that is important to you, it's also important that you tell whoever your vendors, whoever you're working with internally, to put that top of mind, because I would not say that's what AI organizations on the whole are optimizing towards at this moment. I think we will have to, but that's not top of mind right now. I don't know. What would you two say on this?
Yeah, I agree. It's and you're the attorney, so you know there are tools out there. Like I said, I have clients in the medical space, so they are. Microsoft just released a tool last week for the medical field that's, you know, it's HIPAA compliant. So it's coming. It's, you know, the tools that you know that will help protect that data. It's coming. But yes, a lot of the big LLMs are. I mean, I don't trust them, and even some of the smaller ones, you're giving them information, and you know they say that they're going to hold that data private, but if they get sold somewhere else to somebody else, then what happens to it? Yeah, we don't know. So yeah, it's getting there.
I think you're saying like really smart things. I'm super on board. Our two hacks at Gaia have largely been like, as far as like security, right, has largely been buying our way into security, right? So Amazon has some of the strongest data security on the planet. So we use Amazon, right? And now we're a scrappy small company that benefits from, frankly, the biggest company on the planet, right? And their level of security. But another thing that we're doing is exactly what you said, right? I think there's ways to design your systems such that you're not that information is not directly getting into like a parse of the model or et cetera. And so we're very careful with kind of how we're archetyping it. And I think that actually goes a very long ways.
Awesome. Okay. Let's throw out to the audience right here.
Okay, thanks very much. If you can hear me well, thanks for the panel. It's fascinating. I'm Ross Hampton. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of a relatively new global association for forestry companies. So we've got companies that now have forests in 35 different countries, about 17 million hectares that we've got a stand out there if anyone's interested. The main goal at the moment for all of these companies from Latin America, Japan, Europe, etc., is to find out how we're going to map in natural capital outcomes on the estates into the financial markets to make investable the natural capital, which we're all aware is inside the estates already, and it's a public good. We're talking about soil, water, biodiversity. Biodiversity popped up as a question. That's just, of course, one attribute. This flows right through in some of the current natural capital accounts, even to amenity and walking in the forest that's being given a value. So my question really isn't whether AI can help, because I know it can, and we're hearing that from you individually. But if you could talk to a big section of the world's forest managers, land managers, and at the beginning of their journey, could you say to them, it's a bit like that letter to yourself at 18, right? What should we do to make it possible for you to help us collectively on this AI journey to unlock those values?
Who wants to take that?
I had a little bit of a hard time hearing the question, but I'm gonna try my best here. So I think what I heard was currently AI models are limited in how they can guide specific tracts of land because folks walking that forest are gonna know it best. And how do you guide them through this transition to relying more on AI tools? Is that
right?
Generally what okay. Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, it's true that people on the land are going to always know it best. I think the optimal AI tools today are going to help do scenario planning and probabilities in a way that has not been possible before. So many of you have probably heard of Monte Carlo scenarios. That's where you're running running a model thousands of different times and getting probabilities of different outcomes based on sets of random assumptions, essentially. So AI has made that a lot faster and a lot cheaper. And that's a lot of what we do at Arden is we look at thousands or even millions of simulations and say, okay, if the land was used in this way, here are the returns that it may receive. If it's used in this other way, here's what the outcomes may be, but you're gonna get ranges. At the end of the day, it's gonna come down to a lot of other factors that AI just frankly can't help with. So yeah, what's under the canopy, sometimes that's hard unless maybe we'll partner with Peter's company, talk about that, but that's hard data to get. Local resistance, local regs, we can look at a national scale, we can look at things like interconnection queues and transmission data. There's lots of different data we can layer in, but at the end of the day, there's probably somebody in some office somewhere that's going to have to sign off on something, and AI is not going to know how to manage that. So it's going to be a mix, but I would say anything that you can, a simple way of thinking about it is anything you can view from space or access on a data set anywhere in the world, AI is going to become much better at leveraging that data, interpreting it, and guiding you than any human will. And that's probably already happening, and if not, within a year, that will be the case. Anything that you cannot see from space and that does not exist in a data set and cannot be made into a data set, so I think like what Guy is doing is really cool, creating new data sets, that's probably going to be human controlled for a long time. So yeah, that's my...
Kim, do you mind if I add on top of that?
Oh, of course.
I love this question. So,
Yeah.
Because my bias entirely is about how do we integrate into the human experts, right? And so my 2 cents, my flavor on this is really with our approach, right? We're handing foresters the tech, right? We're getting feedback from them every time that we engage with a new forester, with a new customer, a new land. We always hear things, right? We always hear, man, I love this. This is awesome. And we also hear the opposite, right? Man, I kind of hate this part, right? Like, can you change that? And so, like, it's just really, this is very like Y Combinator, right? Like, you engage, you get that feedback, We make sure, because we're geeky people, the biggest anxiety I have is we're going to code in a room somewhere, and when we leave, we're so excited about it, and no one cares, right? And so we don't do that, right? You engage with the people, you pull them into the process, and you make sure that you're building the right tool that they need, right? And that solves their problems. And so I think that's the best way to do it, right? Is make sure that you're engaging heavily in the woods with foresters and pulling them into the process, partnering with them, having them be a part of that process, part of that journey.
And by the way, if we didn't answer the heart of the question, happy to chat after, because I think we had a hard time hearing it.
Yeah, okay. Let's take this one from Slido. From Bruno, he says, what would you advise to the UGA students to get better prepared with the future job market with AI challenges and benefits? Carl, why don't you start us off with that?
Yeah, it's actually a question I get asked a lot. I speak to universities and even parents are coming up going, what should my student, even study in the future? And my question, or my answer is always, and you're ready to write this down? I don't know. Because, quite frankly, positions are going to be added here soon that we've never heard of. All I could say is, actually a great use case, go into, if y'all aren't familiar with deep research, which is a great tool that several large language models has, or generative AI tools like ChatGPT or Perplexity, go in and ask deep research. Say, do research on what my role will look like, and so it'll do incredible research for you, doctoral level research, and then take that and put it into ChatGPT and ask it to do a personalized learning plan based off of that research. And I'll be interested to see what that would say. And it could even help you map out or prepare for that. But yeah, the world is changing so fast with AI. I don't know what some of the roles and titles are going to be.
Yeah.
All I can say is, as I said before, just start. Get started. The more you know about AI, the more you're using it, the better you're going to be.
That being said, Carl, stop using ChatGPT on your college essays.
On the what?
Yes.
The college essays. Yes. It's very widespread.
Yes.
And on job applications.
Yes.
It's
two out of
important.
every.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Danon?
I think you're at an awesome point in your life. You're going to get to change the world, and your 20s are a time when you have this sort of malleable brain and you haven't been set into your ways like all of us on stage. So, yeah, I would embrace the heck out of it, and you're going to be smarter than a lot of people really fast if you do that. I wish I was 20 right now. It's a cool time.
Don't we all? Yeah. No.
So you could use it on your essays.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's great. Okay, and we'll take one more. Let's see. My experience with AI in forestry that is currently too expensive to justify experiments. Forest inventory is a good example. I'm thinking that means spraying with drones is another. How do we get AI companies to invest in our sector? Great question. Any thoughts?
The big question is the so what, right? I think you said this earlier, right? It's you got to start with like what's the, and part of this journey that we're kind of on with each of our customers is answering that so what, right? Is figuring out, hey, what's the exciting thing here, and that means ROI, that means alpha, and so I think as we start to really uncover this, I'm really sad about this, but I think we'll have that much more competition, right? It'll be evident, hey, look, here's the return, here's how we're starting to use it and figure that out. And I think as that becomes a lot more present, we've found a few ways we're a little hush-hush with it, but I think as that becomes more and more prevalent, more and more loud, there'll probably be a lot more competition in this space.
One thing I will say on this is a lot of innovation happens because of venture capital, and that has not been prevalent in this space. I think Peter's raised some, I am in the process of it, and will raise a good amount. That's going to actually help with this a lot, because you could give somebody who's raised venture money $50,000, they can spend $200,000 delivering the product as a way of learning. You get a great outcome. And then that in turn allows us to raise more money because we have clients that are giving us $50,000. And you start to almost like fund it. This is why Uber was so cheap 20 years ago. Now it won't stay cheap forever, but you are going to have that opportunity. So I honestly look to venture-backed companies because that's what they do. Give you more value than you pay.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay, anybody else in the audience have a question? Good? Okay. Well, we will wrap up this session for today. Like I said, we do have a little surprise for you. If you take a look under your chairs, some of you may have a flame taped to it. Your chair's been on fire this whole time and you had no idea. You were sitting in a hot seat. If you've got a campfire flame under your seat, oh, I see one here, come see one of our Orbis folks or Sarah here in the orange shirt. We're going to mail you some Campfire Sessions swag. Come see Sarah in the middle. She's got an orange shirt on. She's going to get your information. We're going to send you some awesome Campfire Sessions gear. Thanks for joining us, guys. We appreciate you. Have a good night.